that's his backstory. I guess it all makes sense then, but Oh! Hello again, test subjects! Godzilla had been dormant on Japanese screens since 1975, with the end of the Showa era in Terror of Mechagodzilla. Several attempts had been made since then to revitalize the monster. Of particular note was one screenplay called Godzilla vs. the Devil, which I've got to say, getting ahead of yourselves a bit there. Instead, it was decided to return the monster to its dark roots as a symbol of nuclear annihilation, inspired by the 3 Mile Island incident, and thus was born The Return of Godzilla, or as it was redubbed by Roger Corman in the dub version, Godzilla 1985. But we're not talking about that version of the film today, especially because this episode is sponsored by Gatorade, not Dr. Pepper, but rather the original Return of Godzilla, and its manga adaptation, and later translation over in the pages of Dark Horse Comics, renamed again as Terror of Godzilla. It's even been colorized to really reflect the era more. A volcanic eruption awakens Godzilla, and we cut to 3 months later, when a reporter named Goro Maki finds a seemingly abandoned fishing boat after a bad storm, and that it's infested with giant sea louse. After killing one and taking the only survivor, Okamura, back to land, Okamura says that what really caused all the problems for them were not just the sea louse, but a giant tail that came out of the water to knock them around a bit. Gee, I wonder what it could possibly have been. They bring their belief to Professor Hayashida, who believes their story. It confirms what he has feared. Godzilla has returned. After Godzilla destroys a Russian submarine, the government orders a media blackout to try to keep panic from spreading about it. In preparation for when the story does break, Goro is sent to interview Hayashida, who recounts how haunted he and the rest of his generation of children were when they were orphaned by the monster. But now he feels differently. He feels a certain intimacy with the creature. Hey now, don't kink shame him. A lot of scientists have tastes that many would consider unorthodox. What I do in my laboratory is none of your concern. Back to the comic. Godzilla arrives on shore and attacks the Shizuoka nuclear plant, feeding on the radioactivity from it. Hayashida compares the creature more to a force of nature than an animal, and yet that comparison doesn't quite bear out when he's attracted by the call of seagulls out to the ocean once more. Coming soon, Godzilla vs. Birdemic. As both America and Russia demand the Prime Minister of Japan allow them to use nuclear weapons to stop Godzilla, his cabinet reveals that they have developed a new weapon to fight him without the use of such dangerous tactics. The Super X, a flying battle tank that can hopefully defeat him. During another attack, a remote launch system for a Russian nuclear missile is accidentally triggered and launches a missile. As people are evacuated into subway lines to try to minimize casualties, the United States launches one of their own missiles to intercept the Soviet one, just barely managing to stop it. Nuclear missiles, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. After our heroes realize that Godzilla was called away by the sounds of the birds, Professor Hayashida believes that the high-frequency sounds are what attracted Godzilla, and they can use it to lure him away. Hopefully straight into a volcano. If they can't kill Godzilla, then perhaps the molten lava and energy can send him back into hibernation. That plan is made the contingency while the Super X is launched, using cadmium missiles to try to stop all nuclear activity in Godzilla's body. It does seem to hurt Godzilla, knocking him unconscious, but then the detonation of the Soviet missile hits, sending out an electromagnetic pulse that disables the Super X and knocks out all power in Tokyo. What's worse, Godzilla is then struck by lightning. I guess just the fallout of the nuclear missile hitting him would make too much sense. And he's able to permanently ground the Super X. With no other choice, the professor's plan is called into action, stopping Godzilla before he flattens Goro during his rampage. Godzilla is sent hurtling into the volcano, Professor Hayashida remarking in his journal that the beast's cries were not those of something dying, but of sadness, regret that its freedom should be so brief, and that Godzilla was beyond good and evil, acting only on its own instincts. But even that still contained a threat, that someday Godzilla would rise again. And of course he did, both in the Heisei era of Godzilla movies and in the comics. When next we return, it will be over to IDW and 50 years of obsession.